Hello and welcome to another of Sethaldor's World of Warcraft guides. This one is going to be on Arcane Mage Glyphing. Gonna try and hit PvE and PvP glyphing at once. So those of you who are familiar with this, you'll know what's coming. Those of you who aren't, what I'm gonna do is run down the whole glyph list for glyphs that an Arcane Mage in this case would be interested in. And then I'm going to talk about them as far as which ones you want to pick for PvE, and then go back to the top and talk about which ones you want to pick for PvP and why I'm suggesting them. Again, the same thing goes for this guide as does for my spec guides. This is simply suggestions. Tailor it to your playstyle. That will be what works best for you. No, I don't have all the glyphs. However, that does not mean I won't suggest glyphs that I don't have. So, without further ado, let's start off going down the Arcane glyph list for PvE Arcane, and then we will go to PvP, and I'll be sure to summarize as we go what I'm suggesting. So first off, we have Glyph of Arcane Missiles, which increases the critical strike chance of your Arcane Missile spell by 5%. Absolutely good, because this will increase the crit chance of every missile hitting the target by 5%, not just the first missile being applied. So very good. That potentially has the chance to increase your DPS exponentially. Next, we have the Glyph of Arcane Barrage you might be interested in, which increases the damage of Arcane Barrage by 4%. Obviously a good thing. Flat damage increase is never a bad thing to worry about. Glyph of Arcane Blast increases the damage buff of Arcane Blast by 3%. What that means is, for those of you who don't know 100% about the buffs or have never done Arcane and are a little concerned, when you cast Arcane Blast, it provides a buff, if you will, but it's actually applied as a debuff that will increase the mana cost of your next Arcane Blast, but it also increases the damage of your next Arcane spell, and now also applies a little buff to haste as well, as they applied in, I believe, the Cataclysm patch. So this will increase that damage buff by an additional 3%. I think it caps out at like 175 or something like that. Some crazy high damage bonus number. So if you can increase that even more, that's obviously a good thing. Again, like I said with the Arcane Barrage glyph, flat damage increases are never anything to overlook. That's always a good thing. Next, we also have Mage Armor, which causes your Mage Armor Glyph, which causes your Mage Armor to regenerate 20% more mana. So basically, over time, it'll give you chunks of your mana back. This will increase those chunks of mana you receive. So, as for Prime Glyphs that a PvE Arcane Mage wants, if you don't have mana issues and you strictly want to focus on damage output, it's pretty obvious which ones you want to get. You want to get Glyph of Arcane Missiles, Glyph of Arcane Barrage, and Glyph of Arcane Blast. Now, I personally, from what I use and my experiences, I find that I do run out of mana fairly quickly, and also keep in mind your Mastery Mana Adept. The more you can keep your mana up, the more overall damage you'll be doing, because you get that damage increase based on how much mana you have left from your Mastery. I also note that I don't really use Arcane Barrage that much unless I'm moving, and I tend to try not to be in motion for too long. I generally save my blink for the right time so that I'm never moving for more than about half a second. So by casting Arcane Barrage, I actually have to wait longer because of the GCD. So I generally don't find myself casting Arcane Barrage that often, if at all, if I can avoid it. But I do like the concept of increasing my overall mana longevity, because Mana Adept is so vital towards an Arcane Mage's DPS. So I actually would recommend to you, and also tell you, that I have used the Glyph of Arcane Missiles. These are Prime Glyphs. Prime Glyph of Arcane Missiles, Prime Glyph of Arcane Blast, and Prime Glyph of Mage Armor. That is my recommendation to you, PvE Arcane Mages, for your Prime Glyphs. Glyph of Mage Armor, Glyph of Arcane Blast, and Glyph of Arcane Missiles. Those would be the 3 recommended primes. Next, we'll look at the major glyphs for Arcane Mages. We have Glyph of Blink, which increases blink distance by 5 yards. Meh, not really that major for PvE. Usually the 20 yards it gives us will be enough, or close to enough, to where we need to go. Glyph of Evocation causes it to heal health as well as give back mana. Not a bad thing if you find yourself taking too much raid damage that the healers can't keep up, but again, you got healers needing to worry about healing yourself outside of bandages. It's debatable. Next, we have Glyph of Invisibility, which increases your movement while you're invisible by 40%. Increasing move speed, not that big of a deal. If there is an event where you need faster move speed, I'm sure you have a druid in your party, or you can say, hey, raid lead, I think it's better to pop time warp so we get the move speed increase there, because you will obviously have a mage. So it's nice, but it's easily avoidable to not waste that spot on Glyph of Invisibility. Glyph of Mana Shield reduces the cooldown of Mana Shield by 2 seconds. You want to try and avoid using Mana Shield as a PvE Arcane Mage, because when you take damage while Mana Shield's up, you're going to be spending mana to avoid damage, which shouldn't be what you want to do, because if you spend mana, that means you have less mana to A, cast spells, and less mana to B, feed into your Mana Adept Mastery, which is very, very vital to an Arcane Mage's DPS. So this actually isn't that good of a glyph for a PvE Arcane Mage. Reducing the cooldown on this, you shouldn't be using it in the first place. If anything, pop your Mage Ward, because you're probably going to be taking magic damage, if any, from AoE. Next, we have Glyph of Slow, which will increase the range of Slow by 5 yards. Again, not that big of a deal in PvE. You're going to be in range to cast your AB anyway, so having the extra range on Slow isn't really going to make sense. Plus, your AB slows for you, so you don't really need to worry about casting slow anyway, so it's kind of a waste of a major glyph spot. We also have Glyph of Arcane Power. While Arcane Power is active, the GCD of your Blink, Mana Shield, and Mirror Image is reduced to 0. This is pretty cool if you're like me, because what I do is I pop all of my cooldowns at once that I can, and to just get like a major burn. I'll pop Arcane Power. I did a whole entire rant on the order of popping this, so don't quote me on this order. Go watch my rant. There will be a link in the related links below, as well as a link to my PvE and PvP Arcane Mage specs. But I'll pop everything. I'll pop Arcane Power, Mana Gem, my Interrupt if it's timed right, and Mirror Images at once. So if I pop Arcane Power before Mirror Images, this will allow it so the Mirror Images doesn't cause a GCD. That means I can be casting something while I create my Mirror Images while Arcane Power's up. That's great. That saves me 1.5 seconds of time that I didn't have before. As for the reducing the GCD on Blink and Mana Shield you don't want to be using anyway. Blink, maybe in a bad situation that can be helpful, but you're really taking this majorly for the Mirror Image GCD reducing to 0 if you have a playstyle like me where you pop everything at once to get the biggest damage increase, which I would highly recommend doing. You could debate grabbing Glyph of Ice Block as Arcane, except what it gives you is pretty much useless in a PvE scenario. Reduces the Frost Nova cooldown. No. Don't worry about that. Next, you have Glyph of Polymorph, which causes your Polymorph to remove any dots on the target. I would highly suggest picking this up, because DKs with their nasty little pestilence can sometimes spread their dots to targets that you are in the middle of sheeping. It is very frustrating to have that happen, and then you get yelled at instead of the Death Knight by your raid leader. That's just ridiculous. So, since there aren't that many uber major glyphs for Arcane Mages, I'd say pick this up. So, as far as my recommendations for what to grab as major glyphs for Arcane PvE, I would say grab Major Glyph of Arcane Power, Major Glyph of Polymorph, and then with your last slot, go ahead and play around. I would suggest avoiding Major Glyph of Mana Shield, Major Glyph of Slow. You could pick Blink or Evocation fairly reasonably. I would highly recommend as the third spot Glyph of Evocation, simply because helping your healers out with the 40% health gain when you evocate is always a nice thing to do. Sometimes the healers are running out of mana. It can be just enough to keep you in the game long enough to finish the boss fight, so it's kind of nice just to have that little bonus on an ability you're already going to be using. So, my personal recommendation for major Arcane PvE glyphs would be Glyph of Evocation, Glyph of Arcane Power, and Glyph of Polymorph. As for the minors generally don't matter for most, if not all, classes. There are a few exceptions to that, like warriors, but that's beside the point. We're focusing on mages. So as far as minor glyphs, Glyph of Conjuring reduces the mana cost of your conjure spells by 50%. You're conjuring outside of combat almost 100% of the time. The only thing this would help in combat would be if you need to reconjure your mana gem, which does occasionally happen. So that's a little helpful, I guess. Glyph of Penguin, that is completely cosmetic. Glyph of Slowfall causes Slowfall to no longer require a reagent. This can actually have a place in a raid scenario, because there are fights that cause you to take massive fall damage. So in the event that there's a mechanic like that, you can say, hey, I can slow fall anyone who needs to be slow falled. The guy's like, you mean I don't have to pull my priest healer off to levitate them? You'll do it for me? You're the best mage ever! You know, so that actually, personally, I think does have a place in a raiding glyph setup. It had a place in BC, I'm not going to lie. I mean, just look at ZA, the wind boss, for those of you who were in there. Oh yeah, that was sure helpful to have slow fall, trust. Next we have Arcane Brilliance. Reduce the mana cost of Arcane Brilliance. You're most likely casting this outside of combat, I would hope, so not really that big of a deal. Glyph of Armors is pretty nice. It'll increase the duration of your armor spells by 30 minutes. If for some reason a fight's going longer than 30 minutes, your armor won't fall off, but it's not that big of a deal. Minors are never that big of a deal. With the exception of this one, this actually does impact your DPS as far as what I've messed with. They may have hotfixed it since I played with it, but Glyph of Mirror Image, I actually had a friend test this out for me, as I obviously don't have the Glyph. So I asked him to throw it on and try it with his different specs to see if there was any change. What this does is it causes your mirror images to cast spells the same as your spec. So if you're a Frost Mage, obviously this won't matter, but we're talking about PvE Arcane, so they'll be casting Arcane Blast. Now, I don't think their Arcane Blast will gain the Nether Vortex bonus, i.e. the double cast of slow, because mirror images don't know slow. But the mirror images are directly connected to your spell power and spell bonuses. So if you have artificial increases from your talent tree to increase the damage of your arcane spells, and they cast arcane spells instead of frost spells, their spell power is essentially increased by whatever increases you have from your talents on that specifically. Such as their Arcane Blast will do 6% more damage if the target is slowed, because your Arcane Blast does 6% more damage if the target's slowed. There was a slight DPS increase, is the point that I was getting at, from using this to not using this with a Fire or Arcane spec. So that's pretty cool that there's actually a minor that not only is cosmetically logical to pick up, but it kind of says, hey, here's a little bit of extra DPS slid in there. Now, they may have hotfixed this, or it may have just been a bug that happened to pop up when we did the test, but as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty cool, and I think that is the case. So I would highly recommend Mirror Image for PvE Arcane Mages. Finally, again, another cosmetic one, Glyph of the Monkey. It causes your polymorph to make him a monkey instead of a penguin, and that was my phone. So, as far as minors for PvE Arcane Mages, we are looking at Glyph of Mirror Image, absolutely. Glyph of Slowfall, I would highly recommend. And the last one, whichever you'd like. I would say Glyph of Conjuring if you want something that might actually play a role in your mana conservation during a fight in case you run out of a mana gem. But other than that, just whatever you want. Minors are almost always whatever you want. So, quick summary of PvE Arcane Mage glyphing. You want for primes, Arcane Missiles, Arcane Blast, and Mage Armor. You want for Magers, Glyph of Evocation, Glyph of Arcane Power, and Glyph of Polymorph. And for minors, you want Glyph of Slowfall, Glyph of Mirror Image, and whatever the hell you want for the third slot. Now, we're going to transition into our PvP glyph section of this, PvP Arcane. So, jump tracks with your mind here with me. Whoa, that was crazy. I don't know about you, but I just tripped out. Alright, so we're going to do essentially the same thing looking at it from a PvP perspective. Increased crit chance on Arcane Missiles, obviously a good thing. Critting means they die faster. Increased damage on Arcane Barrage, significantly more appealing than in a PvE scenario, because hey, I'm actually going to be using Arcane Barrage fairly often because people in PvP like to run away like little chickens. It happens. Or run around you, so you need to keep moving. So having the increased damage on one of your primary instant cast abilities is going to be very awesome. Arcane Blast increases damage buff from Arcane Blast. Obvious why that's good. Increased damage, they die faster. There you go. Self-explanatory. What isn't as appealing in PvP as it is in PvE is this Mage Armor. The Mage Armor regenerating mana, yes, you have your mastery to increase damage, but you're most likely going to die after 1 or 2 fights in a PvP scenario. So, grabbing Glyph of Mage Armor, not going to be that vital because you're not going to need to worry about getting mana back as importantly as in a PvE scenario. Plus, I would recommend using either Frost or Frost or Molten Armor, or Ice Armor, I don't know. The icy one and the fiery one instead of the Mage Armor, because the fire one provides reduced critical strike chance on you, and increases your critical strike chance and does damage back to attackers. And the ice one increases your armor and slows attackers. So honestly, those are more logical, more helpful choices. Now, mage armor does increase your resistances, but resistances have never played a major role in PvP other than having to get over the hump of resistances for base resistance, for those of us who are heavy into arenas and things like that, who know about that. So my personal recommendation for a generic, good old rock'em sock'em PvP arcane mage build who likes to go in and pug BGs like I do, I would say grab Glyph of Arcane Missiles, Glyph of Arcane Barrage, and Glyph of Arcane Blast for your primes in a PvP arcane mage spec. Next, we're going to look at Magers. Increasing the distance that you blink is going to be very awesome. The extra 5 yards will put you out of range of 20-yard abilities, as well as, if you spec the way I did, you have, you might have, I don't know. If you spec into improved blink with your PvP arcane spec, not only are you 25 yards away from the start, putting you out of range of 20-yard abilities, but you have 5 extra yards you didn't have before that you have gained on them to start running away from them even further. Because keep in mind, your Arcane Barrage has, what, a 40-yard range? 30, 40-yard range? So you can be pretty damn far away from them and hurt them. So blink, pretty good. Glyph of Evocation, a necessity for PvP arcane mages. In fact, I might even go as far to say a necessity for all PvP mages. The regain of 40% of your health is ridiculously awesome. Because you can say, Frost Nova someone in place, regardless of your spec, blink away, bam, evocate, get a few ticks of that off, get a chunk of your health back that they have to re-damage, and then you can kill them by the time you're back to whatever health you were before you got the ticks of evocate. So it's very awesome, very excellent, very, very impressive glyph for mages. Very cool when it was implemented. Another cool one to look at would be Glyph of Invisibility. It allows you to move faster when you're invisible. Movement speed is very important in PvP. Also, if you do Twin Peaks and Warsong Gulch fairly often, moving 40% faster lets you get into the flag room 40% faster, grab that flag, and get out of there. Other things, oh, hey, we need more defense in AB. Alright, well, I still can't mount up because I've got a stupid bug or something, or, oh crap, I'm in combat, but I'd rather go help Lumbermill because it seems we have farm under control, but I can't because the guy I fought is still alive. Invisibility, not only do you get out of combat, which was the original goal, but you're moving 40% faster while you're invisible. It just kind of helps you get to the next location faster. Not as impressive as, say, the Evocation Glyph, but still pretty useful. Specifically for PvP arcane mages, this Glyph of Mana Shield is really awesome, because if you recall in my PvP guide spec, again, there will be a link at the end of the video in the related link section to it, we picked up an ability that causes our Mana Shield, when popped, to knock enemies back 12 yards, So if we can get our Mana Shield back up again after that 2 seconds earlier, we can get that knockback ready to go again 2 seconds earlier, which is awesome because that'll keep them away. That'll get them further away 2 seconds earlier than it would have without this glyph. Those 2 seconds are enough to get an Arcane Blast off, which is enough to kill somebody. So I would highly recommend this glyph. Also, increasing the range on your Glyph of Slow by 5 yards, or on your slow spell, sorry, by 5 yards. Pretty cool to grab. Yes, your AB will be slowing them as well, but sometimes you need to cast it on the move. Ergo, slow is an instant cast, AB is not. You can slow someone while chasing after them, then catch up to them and AB them to death. Very impressive, very helpful against flag carriers like druids who are getting out of your range because they cheetah form. Blink, increased range on slow. Oh, look, your little cheetah form is not helping you so much anymore, especially with this next patch coming in. Read my blog for more on that at sethaldor.blogspot.com. Next we have Glyph of Arcane Power, which, as we read before, reduces GCD of those abilities. Not bad, not good. I wouldn't highly recommend it for a PvP situation. It's there if you want it. Next, Polymorph. You don't really want to remove the dots on someone ever in a PvP scenario, especially if there happens to be like a Warlock around you, because he will probably get pissed the hell off that you did that. Trust me, I have a lock. That's annoying. So, and the only time you want to polymorph something is either A, if he's not getting hit anyways and he's just pestering your healer or you, or B, you want to get the stun effect off from your improved polymorph from your talent tree. So it doesn't really matter if he's dotted or not, because those dots will cause him to get the stun effect. So you actually don't want this glyph in a PvP. You also don't want the Arcane Power glyph, too particularly in PvP glyphing setup. So what I would highly recommend for you as far as major glyphs in a PvP arcane spec would be Glyph of Evocation, Glyph of Mana Shield, and finally your pick between Glyph of Blink and Slow. If you'd rather be able to slow them 5 yards further away or get 5 yards further away from your enemy is your choice. I personally go with Mana Shield, Evocation, Blink for my majors. Mana Shield, Evocation, Blink for a PvP Arcane Mage is my suggestion. Again, tailor it to your specific playstyle. That is mine. I find myself needing to get away from people more than catching up to them. Next we have our miners. Again, miners are very, very, very blah for almost everybody. Stupid, pointless, whatever you want to call it. We have 2 cosmetic ones. The Conjuring is almost absolutely useless. Reducing the mana cost of making food and mana gems, lame. 30-minute increased duration on armor is pointless. You're going to be dying every 2 fights, 2 to 3 fights, unless you're like super ridiculously epic, but still it doesn't cost much to re-up an armor. I think armors are becoming free mana cost in this next patch, or highly reduced. You could debate Glyph of Arcane Brilliance in case you get dispelled a lot, but still iffy. I would highly recommend grabbing Glyph of Mirror Image, because if mirror images are casting the same spell as you, chances are a player not paying as much attention won't be able to discern them for a few extra seconds, giving you time. Plus it increases damage out. And Glyph of Slowfall is always nice because you can always jump from Lumber Mill to Blacksmith without requiring a reagent, and Blacksmith to... what's it called? Mine, sorry. And other little things you can run around with in PvP and use Slowfall for. So for miners, I would recommend Slowfall, Mirror Image, and whatever the hell you want for those in a PvP arcane spec. For majors, I would recommend Glyph of Blink, Glyph of Evocation, and Glyph of Mana Shield. And for primes, I would recommend Glyph of Arcane Missiles, Glyph of Arcane Barrage, and Glyph of Arcane Blast for PvP arcane mages. Thank you for watching. This has been Sethaldor of the server Blade's Edge in the Guild Sacrilege on the character Arctic Shatter, the awesome gnome mage with his manly staff of manliness. And it was really fun to make this one for you. It's been a while since I've done a glyph guide, so it was pretty cool. Sorry if it was a little long. Mages are kind of in-depth. It's funny. They're so simple because they can only do one thing, but at the same time, they do that one thing in so many different ways that it piles on. It's pretty crazy. Again, please check out my blog, sethaldor.blogspot.com. Please subscribe, please thumb up, please comment if you enjoyed this video. Please tell your friends about me. I'm trying to get more subscribers, trying to get more views for my partnership, which I'm gearing up to try and apply for. Wish me luck on that. Thank you so much, everyone who has supported me so far. You guys are awesome. Thank you, new people who are just now watching my videos. You guys are great. Again, had fun making this video for you. Can't wait to make another one. Woo! I am really in the zone. Alright, I will catch you guys next time.